Hello everybody, Tim Teacher here, continuing our reading of Obi Gerbil on the Loose. Last time, Obi met the old mouse, and the old mouse showed Obi some secret passages through the house, and they could see into all the different rooms in the kitchen. They could see the cats eating, and they could see into Craig's bedroom. And all over the house were these secret passages. Then the old mouse told Obi that she had to go through the indoctrination. And that's where we're starting today. Chapter 22, the indoctrination. My what? Asked Obi. Your indoctrination, said the old mouse, as they made their way through the passageway back to the attic. What on earth is that? It was not a word Obi was familiar with. It certainly wasn't a word she remembered Mr. Armstrong uttering when he read aloud children's books to Rachel. Your school lesson, replied the old mouse. I'm going to school? Asked Obi, surprised and frowning. Why am I going to school? What am I going to learn? How long do I have to go to school for? The old mouse turned and gave Obi a sharp glance. Anyone ever tell you that you're a chatterbox? No, said Obi. Well, you are, snapped the old mouse. Now button it up, will you, till we get back to the attic. Obi was offended and frankly rather hurt that the old mouse would talk to her in such a gruff manner. A chatterbox? Obi decided she would not say another word to Mr. Durkins, the old curmudgeon, and she didn't. Even when they got back to the attic, Obi refused to speak. Mr. Durkins disappeared into the shadows behind an ancient, upright vacuum cleaner. A few moments later, he reappeared, limping into view with what appeared to be, wow, could it be? A round chocolate sandwich cookie with white, creamy filling. When Obi saw this, there was no way she could possibly keep quiet. Is that a cookie? Where did you get that? From Music Boy, replied the old mouse in a very matter-of-fact tone of voice. Tad gave you a cookie? Obi asked, surprised. No, of course not, said Mr. Durkins. He stopped in front of Obi and broke off a small piece of the cookie. The other day, Music Boy dropped some cookies in the upstairs hallway. Hey, I saw him drop those cookies, cried Obi. It happened right in front of Rachel's bedroom doorway. The old mouse snickered. Know why Music Boy dropped them? Obi shook her head. No. Why? Because yours truly ran out and startled him. The moment the cookies fell onto the carpet, I grabbed one, then dashed back into the secret passageway. Well, that explains that, said Obi. Now here's what we're going to do, said the old mouse. I'm going to teach you your school lessons. Every time you get something right, you'll be rewarded with a little piece of the cookie. Okay? Okay, said Obi. The old mouse was about to begin the lesson when Obi raised her paw. Yes, he said. How come you didn't give me the cookie before? Asked Obi. You know, instead of that piece of stale bread. I needed the cookie as an incentive, replied the old mouse. Now, lesson number 1. Obi raised her paw again. Looking a little exasperated, Mr. Durkins said, What is it? What's an incentive? It's something exciting, responded the old mouse. Something that causes you to work really hard because you want it so badly. I see, said Obi, nodding. Now, lesson number... Obi lifted her paw again. What is it this time? Demanded the old mouse, losing his patience. Why do you need an incentive? To make sure you'll learn your lessons, he replied. I knew a cookie was something special that you'd really want. Before he could be interrupted again, the old mouse quickly continued. Now lesson number 1. Repeat after me. I hate the Armstrongs. Obi, blinking, gaped at the old mouse. This was not exactly what she thought her lesson was going to be about. But I don't hate the Armstrongs, she said. Then you don't get any cookie, said Mr. Durkins. Obi's eyes fell on the cookie. It looked so delicious, particularly that white creamy filling. Obi suddenly felt ravenously hungry. But I'm starving, Mr. Durkins, said Obi. I need to eat. Well, if you learn your lesson, you'll eat, said the old mouse. It's as simple as that, kid. You need to understand the relationship between humans and rodents. They hate us, and we hate them. So repeat after me. I hate the Armstrongs. Obi did not want to say this, but she was feeling weak from hunger again. Obie tried to reason with herself. What would be the harm of saying it? It wasn't as if she actually had to mean it. I hate the Armstrongs, said Obie. Good, cried the old mouse, grinning. He handed Obie a little piece of the cookie. Obie popped it into her mouth. It tasted scrumptious. Lesson number 2, said the old mouse. I hate Mr. Armstrong. Obie did not want to say this either. Once again, though, she told herself she could say it without really meaning it. I hate Mr. Armstrong. Obie was expecting another piece of cookie, but the old mouse did not give her one. Next, he said, I hate Mrs. Armstrong. To help her say this, Obie thought of all those times that Mrs. Armstrong had flicked on Rachel's bedroom ceiling light at 6:30 on dark, cold, winter mornings, waking Rachel and Obie up. I hate Mrs. Armstrong. Very good, said the old mouse. He handed Obie another piece of cookie. Lesson 3. I hate Craig. This one was easy to say. I hate Craig, said Obie. I hate the twins, said the old mouse. I hate the twins, said Obie. To Obie's surprise, it was becoming easier and easier to use the hate word. We're making excellent progress, said the old mouse, looking quite pleased. His dark, beady eyes shone brightly. Now for the final lesson of the day, I hate Rachel. No, not Rachel, thought Obie. That was going too far, much too far. There was no way Obie could or would say such a thing. Even if she didn't mean it, she could never say she hated her adopted mother. I'm sorry, Mr. Durkins, but I can't say that. You must, cried the old mouse fiercely. I can't, protested Obie. Please don't make me say it. All right, said the old mouse, don't say it, but no more cookie. It's your choice. Obie heard her stomach growl. She felt so hungry. It was as if the piece of stale bread and the little pieces of cookie that she had wolfed down had awakened her stomach and reminded Obie of just how famished she was. Just say it, Obie, she told herself. You don't have to mean it. I, stammered Obie in a voice that was not much louder than a whisper. Go on, say it, ordered the old mouse. I hate... But try as she might, Obie could not finish the statement. She was nearly in tears. Go on, you're almost there, coached the old mouse. Just say it, and I'll give you this big piece of cookie. The old mouse broke off a large chunk of the cookie and held it in front of Obie's nose. You've almost said it, kid, said Mr. Durkins. Come on, you can do it. I know you can. With tears in her eyes, Obie tried again. I hate Ray. The old mouse waved the big piece of cookie back and forth in front of Obie's face. Go on, say it, he said. I hate Rage. No, cried Obie, stamping her foot on the floor. I don't hate Rachel. Obie grabbed the big piece of cookie out of the old mouse's paw and violently flung it at the old mouse. Here, take your darn old cookie, you wicked old mouse. I don't hate Rachel. I love Rachel, and she loves me. Obie swung around and marched toward the attic door to head back to her cage. Hey, kid, the old mouse called out after her. Let me ask you something. If Rachel loves you so much, how come Music Boy isn't feeding you while she's away? Obie stopped, turned, and glared at the old mouse. I don't know why, she said, but I still know she loves me. Oh, I think you know why, said the old mouse. Rachel forgot you. Seems to me if she really loved you, she wouldn't have forgotten you. You're wrong, cried Obie. Rachel does love me, and she would never forget me. There's one way to find out, said the old mouse. How? Asked Obie. She lifted her paw to her face and wiped the tears from her eyes. The Armstrongs left Music Boy instructions on feeding the pets, said Mr. Durkins. The sheet of paper is on the kitchen table. If you're mentioned in the instructions, well, then I guess that would prove she does love you. Obie could not believe the old mouse. He actually wanted her to go into the kitchen. He wasn't serious, was he? The cats hung out in the kitchen. The cats would attack poor Obie the moment they set eyes on her. There was no way they'd ever let her get near the kitchen table, let alone near the instructions on top of the table. But I can't, Obie started to say when the old mouse interrupted. Don't tell me you can't read, kid, because I know you can. I've watched you when Mr. Armstrong is reading to Rachel. I've seen your lips move. Obie was startled that the old mouse knew her secret. I was going to say I can't go into the kitchen. That's where the cats hang out. They'd never let me get near the kitchen table. If you really want to find out if Rachel loves you, you'll find a way, replied the old mouse. Goodbye, Mr. Durkins, said Obie. Thank you for feeding me, and thank you for saving my life from that horrible death trap. I'm sorry I have to say this, but I hope I never see you again. Go take a look at that sheet of paper, said the old mouse. Find out the truth, Obie. It was the first time the old mouse had called Obie by her name. Under different circumstances, Obie might have felt elated, even touched, that the old mouse had actually spoken her name instead of calling her kid. But not now. Now she turned and walked across the dusty old floorboards toward the light shining underneath the attic door. Chapter 23, The Truth. I think we're going to find the note this time that Mr. Durkins spoke of. By the time Obie slipped back into her cage, she was sobbing. She felt so terribly confused and just plain miserable. She knew whom she hated, and it was not Rachel. She hated that wretched old Mr. Durkins. Why did he have to say those horrible things about Obie's adopted mother? Obie knew she should feel grateful to the old mouse for saving her life, but why did he have to put those ugly thoughts into her head? Couldn't he just have saved Obie and left it at that? That night, like every night since Rachel and her family had been gone, Obie had the worst time falling asleep. Tonight, though, it was not an empty stomach that kept her awake, or the thought of having a nightmare. No, this time it was her heart. It felt as if it was being twisted and yanked in all different directions. Obie had so many questions. Why wasn't Tad feeding her? Had Rachel really forgotten her? Had her adopted mother actually forgotten to leave instructions for Tad to feed Obie? Obie hated to admit it, but it was just like Rachel to forget something important like that. But just because Rachel might have forgotten, it didn't mean she didn't love Obie, did it? No, of course not. It simply meant she was a forgetful kid. But if she had forgotten to leave instructions for Tad, wouldn't Rachel remember Obie while she was on vacation? Wouldn't she call Tad on the phone and beg him to feed Obie? Please, Tad, I forgot to tell you before I left to feed Obie. Quick, Tad, get over to my house right away and go feed Obie. The poor little thing is starving. Yes, she would absolutely do that. Unless, that is, the old mouse was right, and Rachel really didn't love her, and had forgotten all about her little gerbil. A lump formed in Obie's throat, and her eyes welled up with tears as she thought this. Then Obie thought, what am I saying? Of course Rachel loves me, and would never forget me. It's all Tad's fault. It's got to be. He's so busy listening to music on those gosh darn earphones, he probably hasn't even looked closely at the instructions that are sitting right on the kitchen table. Obie sighed. As much as she hated to admit it, she knew the old mouse was right. There was only one way to find out the truth. She would have to read those instructions. But to do that, she would have to sneak into the kitchen, get past the cats, and climb up onto the kitchen table. How would she ever accomplish that? Obie got busy devising a plan. At first, she had trouble thinking of what to do, but then she remembered what always happened whenever she ventured downstairs, and, just like that, the plan came to her. Rather than put her plan into effect right that minute, though, she decided to get some sleep. Her plan was a dangerous one, at least for a gerbil, and she wanted to be good and alert when she carried it out. Early the next morning, in the gray, smudgy light of dawn, Obie quietly snuck out of her cage. Like the day before, she patted together a mound of cedar shavings so the cats, if they happened to drop by, would think she was asleep beneath the pile. Then she shut her cage door so it would appear that it was tightly closed. Out in the hallway, Obie turned in the direction that led downstairs. The first thing Obie did when she arrived downstairs was to check on the cats. So far, so good. All three were in the kitchen, asleep in their usual spots and around the kitchen table. Obie continued down the hallway to the TV room. Mac lay sprawled on his doggy bed, deep in slumber and snoring loudly. No surprise there. The goldfish were also asleep in their underwater castle. Mr. Smithers was asleep too in his cage. His eyes were shut and his beak was resting upon his feathered chest. Psst, Mr. Smithers, whispered Obie, standing beneath the parrot's cage. Wake up! No response. Mr. Smithers, whispered Obie again, a little louder this time. The parrot stirred, opened an eye. It's me, Obie, whispered Obie. She waved a paw at him. Looking startled, the parrot opened both eyes wide and jerked his head up. Erp, he said. Hello, whispered Obie. Hello, hello, echoed Mr. Smithers. Shh, said Obie. I need your help. Help, help, cried the parrot. Obie, flustered, frantically waved her front paws at Mr. Smithers to hush up. Shh, quiet, Mr. Smithers. Shh, quiet, Mr. Smithers, repeated the parrot. Oh, for goodness sake, muttered Obie, annoyed and exasperated. Couldn't Mr. Smithers do anything right? Obie decided to get right to her plan. She crept over to the doorway that led into the hallway. Obie is loose, she called out. Obie is loose. Obie is loose, Obie is loose, echoed the parrot. Gerbil on the loose, Gerbil on the loose, Obie cried out again. Gerbil on the loose, Gerbil on the loose, repeated the parrot. By now, Obie was so nervous, her heart felt like it was going to pound right out of her chest. Gerbil on the loose, Gerbil on the loose, cried the parrot. In the dining room, cried Obie. In the dining room, screeched the parrot. Obie heard a cat jump down onto the floor of the kitchen. Then she heard two other cats spring onto the floor. Then she heard the patter of cat feet hurrying into the dining room. Mr. Smithers, meanwhile, was acting like a smoke detector that had gone off and wouldn't shut up. Gerbil on the loose, Gerbil on the loose, in the dining room, in the dining room. Obie realized that it was time for her to make her next move. Taking a deep breath, she dashed down the hallway. When she got to the kitchen doorway, she stopped and peered in. Not a cat in sight. Okay, thought Obie, here I go. Obie fixed her gaze on the kitchen table and scurried across the tiled floor. When she was nearly at the table, she took a flying leap into the air, straight toward one of the kitchen chairs. Perfect! She landed right on the cane seat. Obie stood on her hind legs and, with her front paws, grabbed hold of the linen tablecloth. She dug her claws into the fabric and hoisted herself up onto the top of the table. It felt so weird to be on the table where Rachel and her family ate their meals, but Obie had no time to think about this. She glanced about the table for the sheet of paper with Tad's instructions. She didn't see it, though. The only thing she saw was a stack of music CDs. Obie recognized the top CD. It was Rachel's CD. Then Obie saw the titles that were on the sides of the other CD cases. It was all Rachel's music. Obie frowned. How weird. What were Rachel's CDs doing on the kitchen table? Then Obie remembered the wicked, horrid plan that Tad and Craig had schemed up back on that morning that the Armstrongs left for vacation. To save Craig from having to listen to Rachel's CDs during the trip, Tad had hidden her CDs in the cabinet above the stove so Mr. Armstrong wouldn't see them and pack them in the human mobile. The plan had called for Tad to take the CDs out from the cabinet after the Armstrongs left and place them on the kitchen table so it would appear, when the Armstrongs returned from vacation, as if Mr. Armstrong had forgotten to pack them. From the looks of things, everything so far had gone according to the two boys' evil plan. Obie wandered around the stack of CDs. As she did so, she spotted it, the instructions. A salt and pepper shaker sat on top of the sheet of notebook paper. Obie stepped onto the paper and began to read. Tad, please be sure to give Mac 1 can of dog food and 1 scoop of dry food in the morning and evening. You'll find both in the pantry and the kitchen. He also needs to be let outside for a few minutes. The cat's food is also in the pantry. They each get dry cat food in the morning and a can of cat food in the evening. Their litter box is in the basement. You should change it at the end of the week. Mr. Smithers should be fed once a day. His food is in the TV room, as is the fish food. The goldfish get fed twice, once in the morning and once in the evening. They get just a sprinkle. If you need to reach us, we're at Several phone numbers with area codes were listed at the bottom of the paper. Obie, blinking, stared at the note. That was it. That was the end of the instructions. Not a single word about feeding Obie. Nothing at all. Obie felt her eyes growing wet with tears, but then Obie thought of something. Maybe her name was hidden under the salt and pepper shaker. She turned and with her rear end pushed the salt shaker off the piece of paper. Then she pushed the pepper shaker off. Then she turned to take another look at the instructions. Alas, nothing more had been written under either the salt or pepper shaker. So the old mouse was right. Rachel had forgotten Obie. A tear slipped from Obie's eye and plopped down onto the sheet of notebook paper. The drop landed on one of the words that were written in blue pen. The ink instantly swelled and blurred, turning the teardrop blue. Well, 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 look who we have here, an all too familiar voice said from behind Obie. Being the skittish creature she was, Obie should have been startled out of her wits. She should have leaped off the table and tried to scamper away, but Obie didn't. Instead, she just let out a sigh, a deep, despairing sigh, turned and, in a weepy voice, said, "Hello, Sugar Smacks." Chapter 24, Cornered. Right, so Sugar Smacks and possibly the other two cats, right, have found Obie. As Obie gazed in the Sugar Smack's large, gleaming eye, she was surprised she didn't feel more concerned for her life. After all, Sugar Smacks was only a few inches away. No bars, no layer of thick Gerbil-mobile plastic separated Obie from the cat. Not only that, but Sugar Smack's tail was moving all about, doing that awful swirling and swishing thing it always did whenever she was around Obie. "Hey, Obie," she said, "let's play our game. Come on. Touch my paw." The cat held out her paw for Obie to touch. "If you don't mind, Sugar Smacks, could you please just pounce on me and get it over with," said Obie. "Put me out of my misery." "Sure, I'd be happy to," replied Sugar Smacks. "But first, let's play our game." At that moment, Obie heard another cat hop up onto the kitchen table. It was Honey Buns. "Well, for heaven's sake," said Honey Buns, staring at Obie in amazement. "That crazy old parrot was right. You are loose." She focused her eyes on Sugar Smacks and said, "Hey, what's the game you just mentioned? I want to play too. Can I? Can I?" Sugar Smacks pulled her paw away from Obie. "Game?" she said, frowning, pretending she had no idea what Honey Buns was talking about. "What game? Nobody is playing a game." "I heard you say game," said Honey Buns. Sugar Smacks chuckled. "You thought I said game? I said shame. You know, as in, isn't it a shame?" "It didn't sound like shame," said Honey Buns. "It sounded like game." "Oh, it was shame all right," said Sugar Smacks. "Come on, Sugar Smacks, let me play too," said Honey Buns. "Play what?" asked Sugar Smacks, still playing dumb. Honey Buns pouted. "Oh, all right, be that way," she said. "But Obie is mine now, so if you'll kindly excuse yourself." Excuse me," said Sugar Smacks. "But I was here first. You know what they say, first come, first served." "Who says that?" said Honey Buns. "I don't say that." She peered at Obie and said, "Do you say that, Obie?" Obie shook her head and said no, which was the truth. She had never said it. She had never had any reason to. "Well, I say it," said Sugar Smacks. "Well, it's 2 against 1, said Honey Buns. "Where do you get 2 from?" demanded Sugar Smacks. "Obie and me." "Obie doesn't count," said Sugar Smacks. "Why not?" asked Honey Buns. "Because she doesn't. She's a gerbil." "So?" "So, gerbils don't count." "Of course they do," insisted Honey Buns. She glanced at Obie again and said, "You count, don't you, Obie?" Obie shrugged. "Sure, I guess I do." "Hey, you keep out of this," said Sugar Smacks irritably, glowering at Obie. The cat angrily smacked Obie with the furry back of her paw. This, in turn, sent Obie flying off the edge of the kitchen table and into the air. With a soft thud, the little gerbil plopped down on her bum-bum on the tiled floor. She landed in front of the refrigerator. Obie picked herself up just as Sweetie Smoochkins came strolling into the kitchen from the dining room. The cat stopped and, looking startled as anything, stared at Obie. "Hey, you are loose," she exclaimed. Now, being slapped by Sugar Smacks had 2 effects on Obie. One, It allowed her to escape from Sugar Smacks and Honey Buns, and two, it served as a wake-up call for the little gerbil. Obie realized that, as glum and dispirited as she felt, she wasn't quite ready to let herself be devoured by a cat. Sweetie Smoochkin stepped toward Obie. Her tail began to swirl and dip. Obie, whipping around, bolted for the hallway. She'd only taken a few steps, however, when Sugar Smacks and Honey Buns both sprang down from the kitchen table. The two cats landed in front of Obie, blocking that exit out of the kitchen. Terrified, Obie froze. "Looks like we've got you cornered, Fuzzball," said Sweetie Smoochkins, grinning. She was standing near the doorway to the dining room, so that eliminated that way out of the kitchen. Obie's heartbeat quickened as she glanced frantically about the kitchen for another escape route. She spied a narrow, vertical opening, a sort of crevice between the refrigerator and the cabinet that was beside it. The opening was just wide enough for Obie to slip into, but not the cats. Quickly, Obie turned and darted into the opening. The cats were caught by surprise. They whirled about and rushed to the refrigerator. The three of them crowded in front of the narrow opening. "There's no way out, Obie, so you might as well come out," said Sugar Smacks. "Yeah, if you know what's good for you," said Honey Buns. Sweetie Smoochkins added, "You'll have to come out sooner or later, Fuzzball. Might as well be sooner than later." Obie, her heart pounding furiously, did not know what to do. As long as she stayed in the crevice, she was safe. But how long could she hide in here? Honeybun squished her face against the narrow opening and stuck her paw into the crevice to try and swat Obie. The little gerbil took a step back to avoid the cat's lunging paw. As she did, she stepped on something. Obie looked down. It was a piece of pink notebook paper. It was lying on the filthy crevice floor, right next to a dust-covered Cheerio that had rolled into the crevice long ago. Glancing about, Obie saw that quite a number of small items had fallen into the crevice. A toy jack, a penny, a small rubber ball, and a refrigerator magnet that looked like a hamburger. As she was gazing about at all these things, Obie noticed something about the piece of paper that she was standing upon. Something really astonishing. Rachel's handwriting was on it. Even more startling, Obie's name was written on the paper. Obie, frowning, stepped to the side, bent down, and picked up the piece of paper. She held it up to the light, what little light that fell into the crevice, thanks to Honey Bun's big, fat head blocking the opening. Fortunately, Obie had just enough light to read the note. "Tad, please feed Obie. His food is in the pantry. He gets fed twice a day, and don't forget to fill his water bottle. Thanks, Rachel. P.S. He loves the yogurt puffballs." It was as if a locked door in Obie's troubled heart had suddenly exploded opening, letting in a burst of light, beautiful, warm, radiant light. The little gerbil felt so wonderful, so relieved, and so loved. Rachel had not forgotten Obie. No, not at all. Her adopted mother did love her, and this note proved it. The note answered so many questions and instantly lifted Obie's spirits. But now she had another question. How on earth had the note ever found its way into this dark, narrow, filthy crevice? And then, just like that, the mystery got solved. On the opposite side of the kitchen, there was an unexpected sound, that of a key turning in the lock. Tad was here. Honeybuns pulled her face from the crevice opening and peered at the kitchen door. Now that Honeybun's big head wasn't in the way, Obie could see the other two cats. All three of them were gazing at the door. They glanced back at the crevice, then over at the door again. Clearly, they were having trouble deciding whether to continue to guard Obie or dash to the door and greet Tad when he entered the house. The doorknob jiggled. With loud meows, Honeybuns, Sugar Smacks, and Sweetie Smoochkins raced toward the door. Obie heard the kitchen door push open. She felt a breeze from outside the house enter the dark crevice. And then the most astonishing thing happened. From her hiding spot, Obie watched as the sheet of paper with Tad's instructions blew off the kitchen table. Powered by the breeze, it gently floated through the air and landed on the kitchen floor, directly in front of the crevice opening. If the paper had been a little smaller, say, about the size of Rachel's note, it would have floated right into the crevice. Next week we'll continue on. We might finish our book next week. I hope you enjoyed the reading this week. I look forward to reading with you next week. Bye-bye.